Hey, welcome back to A Mission Focused Life. I'm Pastor Tanner in Rock Island, Illinois. I am with Tim Olafson down in Tennessee. Tim, how's it going today, buddy?
Hey, it is good. We're getting some thunderstorms right now, but it's just hot and humid down here. But you know what? Life's good in Tennessee.
Hey, you know what? That's one of my favorite states. I can't wait to come and join you down there.
Yeah, we went out and did our
Well,
we went out and did our first hike
hey,
last week, and went out and kind of looked
did
around, and there's a nice river runs right through here. It's got some world class kayaking and fly fishing. I don't know if you're into fly fishing at all, but any friends who want to come down and get world class kayaking, whitewater rafting, and fly fishing, this seems to be the spot to be. So.
well, I will take you up on that. That sounds fantastic. Well, today we're going to talk about a topic that everybody can relate to. It's something that everybody uses in their everyday lives, and it's a big part of living our lives on mission if we do it the right way. Tim, we're going to talk about money.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, everybody loves to hear a pastor talk about money, right? I mean, that just seems to be everybody's favorite thing in the
Yeah.
world. So, all joking aside, Tim, I got to ask you a very, very important question, and you cannot answer this as a ministry leader because I already know if you were able to do this, you would give all of your money to Jesus and to missions. So that can't be your answer, but if I was able to give you a blank check and you were able to buy one item just for fun, just for pleasure, what would that be?
For personal pleasure.
Yeah, just for you, just to have.
Probably go out to Pebble Beach and play around of golf with three friends. Is that what you're looking
All
for?
right. All right. Hey, that sounds great to me.
Yeah.
You know, if we're talking about fancy vacations, I would probably book a week-long trip to go hiking in the mountains of Peru.
Yeah.
I just think it would be so cool to go down and see the stars just completely unobstructed from some of the tallest mountains in the world. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And one of the things when you
Well,
ask me that question, it's almost like if you would have asked me the other question, if I gave you a blank check, what would you do to help in missions? I could rattle off 10 things that I would love to be able to use that money for. But I think that kind of shows that I'm maybe on the right track because when you ask me what I wanted to do personally with that, it's like, hmm, I don't know. I had to think about it a little bit. So,
Well, you know, you kind of have that you could have that response that God gave to Solomon. You know, you didn't ask for long life, you didn't ask for for health or for war or for any of that stuff. So I'm going to give it to you. So I'm going to pray that you get that trip to Pebble Beach. That'd be a lot of fun.
that would be.
So why do you think it is, Tim, that so many Christians get leery when the topic of money is brought up within church or in connection to being a Christian?
I think because they feel a lot of them. I'm not going to say everybody, but I think we feel guilty that we know we're not using the resources God has given us as well as we should or could be. We're all a little bit hesitant because a lot of times, and we can get into this a little bit later. So there's the tithing you should be doing, and then there's the offering. That's that sacrificial giving, the giving that actually hurts. And I think a lot of Christians probably do the tithing pretty well, but the offering or the sacrificial giving, that is tough because that hurts because that takes away from something else that you want. So getting back to your original question was, I think we feel bad that we're not doing as much as we probably think we should be or could be doing with the resources God has given us. I don't know. That's my initial response.
Okay. Well, you know, I know that a lot of people have been hurt in church settings, and they've seen money maybe used incorrectly, or they've seen it used selfishly. I've been in some of those situations where I've seen, you know, some family members and of pastors get to utilize the church money just kind of however they wanted to for themselves, and you know, sometimes that can be pretty gross. You know, at other times we see these Christian ministry leaders out there with these humongous houses, you know, 15, $20 million homes and these private jets. And, the media does a really good job of souring us on those individuals and making us question their lavish lifestyles. At the other side of that, sometimes I wonder, well, we don't ever seem to question when professional basketball players or, people that make large amounts of money doing other things have nice houses and nice cars. So why do you think it is that when it comes to Christians who make a lot of money, people have such a hard time with them expressing it with material goods?
Yeah. And I admit, I struggle with that too. I don't want to see, I don't like seeing Christian leaders live lavish lifestyles. That, to me, that's inappropriate. Now, if you're running a top nonprofit organization or one of the best churches, should you be paid accordingly? Because I am definitely a free market guy. Yes, you need to be paid accordingly. But for me, from a Christian perspective, there is overboard on some of that. But we also, we prejudge. I mean, let's just say there's a pastor or something, a ministry leader that makes $1 million a year. We don't know. They could be giving 500,000 of that away. We don't quite know exactly what they're doing with their resources, but I don't know. So I struggle with that too. I do not like seeing Christian leaders living lavish lifestyles. I struggle with that because there's so much need in this world, and they should be representing a better, they should be getting a better message. They shouldn't be giving media the opportunity to attack them for living that way. Now, a basketball player, once again, I'm a kind of a capitalist free market guy. If the market value says that LeBron James should make $40 million a year, he should earn that and he should spend it any way he wants. But from a Christian perspective, I tend to go the other way. I tend to think that we need to be more responsible with those resources.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I was surprised a few years ago to learn after doing a little bit of studying that the vast majority of those Christian leaders that you typically see put out there for their homes none of them actually make a paycheck from their ministries. All of their money comes from book deals and from speaking engagements, and so then that kind of changes things a little bit, because it's like, all right, well, now they're making money, using their talents and their abilities. So, but I agree there is something though about being a Christian that should we seek to have the nicest things available when nice things are okay. I often tell people that I don't think I would drive a Lexus when a Toyota will do just fine, and for some people, a Lexus would be the lower quality vehicle. They're thinking of Jaguar or Mercedes or something really top end. And so I think it does kind of depend on the individual or where you live even. But I do think that there is something to be said as Christians that we should seek to live within a certain means and definitely not flaunt what we have.
Yeah. And I think that's a key part of it, flaunting and kind of showing off what you have. Even if you are a Christian leader that made all of his money on the side, not through salaries or through offerings that people give towards your church or whatever. But yeah, so that's, I don't know. I struggle with this a little bit. I just think, what would Jesus do? Well, if Jesus was living in today and Jesus walking this earth, what kind of house would he be living in? And maybe that's not fair, because if I had the ability, or I was blessed with making a couple $1 million a year, would my perspective change? Probably quite a bit. Right. But I don't know until you're in that situation.
Well, I'm sure you've heard of J.C. Penney. From what I've read about him, at the end of his life, J.C. Penney was giving away 90% of his income a year.
Yeah.
And I think that just about any of us would consider that to be pretty lavish, to give away 90% of what you made. However, the 10% that he kept was still millions of dollars a year. And so this goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's so easy for us to prejudge when we hear people make all of this money, or we see them, living at such a standard. But my goodness, maybe sometimes people are able to have the things that they do because God knows that he can trust them with them. Yeah. A J.C. Penney, if let's say he was keeping $1 million or $10 million a year, but he was giving away $1 1 to 90 million or 10 to 90 million dollars a year, my goodness,
Yeah.
I don't make close to $1 million a year, but I also don't give away 90% of what I make. And so sometimes I think we do have to be very careful about not judging other people for what they have, and instead just be a lot more focused on what we're doing with what God has given us.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I agree.
So now that we've kind of talked about the ugly of money, let's talk about the good. How do you think God intends for us to use money to live our lives on mission?
So I think besides the 90% that he wants us to keep, that is to make sure that we can uh, maintain what we need to maintain, whether it's our health, our families, just proper living, um, those types of things. That's what the 90% is for. And that's kind of basic on the tithing, rule that he gives us. We're blessed that he lets us keep 90% of what he gives us. Uh, so I'm not sure. I think I need you to bring this conversation back on the rails. I think I got off track a little bit.
Well, I think living our life on mission with our finances means doing just that, being focused on the kingdom. So, how can I use my finances to build the kingdom? And I think you're 100% right. That starts at home. But as somebody that just bought a house within the last year, you just bought a house within the last year, God gives us parameters and boundaries. So, if I make $20,000 a year, that's going to look different than if I make $100,000 a year, or if I make $1 million a year. And I think one of the things that gets a lot of Christians in trouble is we look around us and we see people having things that we don't have, and we try to live beyond our means. And when we try to live beyond our means, it really takes us out of the mission, because I'm not able to successfully live on mission if I'm trying to keep up to a standard that I haven't reached yet.
Yeah. And you see, we fell into that trap in our earlier years and then we had some credit card debt, and we still have a little bit of credit card debt, but it's not so much now trying to keep up with the Joneses, that old saying. But early on it was, and it hurt us. And you can't do, when you're chasing something that's not yours or shouldn't be yours, it's going to do more harm than good. So it keeps you from living that mission focused life where you can effectively use the resources that God has blessed you with.
Yeah. Well, that goes along with what Ecclesiastes 5:10 says. It says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity." So it becomes this vain thing where money becomes about, hey, look at me, look what I can have, look what I can do. And so interesting that so many times we will buy things with money that we don't need. And what we have already works well. It's already just fine, but we have to have that updated model. We have to have that nicer countertop. We have to have that extra 400 square foot. We have to have that newer model of car, or that nicer style of designer jeans. And it's interesting how that we can get caught up into those things, and it totally takes us off mission, because my goodness, just giving 10%, if every Christian in this country gave 10% of this income, churches would have plenty of money. Nonprofits would have plenty of money to meet their bottom lines, to pay their staff, and to keep the lights on. And then on top of that, we'd have money to fight every type of difficulty and problem in the nation. Absolutely. But it's kind of that lack of obedience, and it's that lack of follow through. God gave us a perfect system, and when we live in that system, things go well for us. But when we don't, then things tend to break down.
Yeah, and we're struggling personally. We're struggling with that right now as we moved into a new home. Well, it's not a new home; it's a 105-year-old home that's been redone. But a lot of the stuff that we brought with us either doesn't fit. So it's weird. It's small things, but so we're donating a lot of the stuff that we got, and we're buying new stuff, and it's like, so I just find a hard time sometimes figuring out that balance about what do we need, what do we want. I guess it's the there's a difference there. What do we need to put into our home to have a home that's comfortable and brings us joy so that we can serve people better? Because you don't want to suffer to the point where you're depressed and you don't, so I think you need to have comfortable living, but it's just trying to find that balance between your needs and your wants.
Yeah.
And we're struggling with that. Even today, we were out doing some shopping. It's like, do we really need that? So yeah, it's an ongoing battle, even for people of faith.
Sure. I'm by no means am I a prosperity gospel preacher. However, I do believe firmly in God's promise to bless those who give and who are generous, who tithe and give their offerings. I believe that there is a spiritual law connected to that, and that God takes care of those people above and beyond what they have done. I've seen that evidenced in my own life for 20 years. I see it in people in my church, and I see it within our church. Just the blessing that God brings through obedience and through generosity. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful not to have a poverty mentality. For so many years, people just expected Christians to be poor, or they expected ministers to be poor. I don't think that that's healthy either, because if you don't have your basic needs met, if you don't have some basic levels of comfort, then that's where your focus is going to be on as well. And you're not going to be able to do the things that you desire to do or that you need to be able to do. And so I do think it comes back to what we talked about originally of finding balance. I don't think God is opposed to people having nice things. I think we have to avoid having extravagance. I don't think that's part of God's design for us. I think that there is a moderation that we can do. And I think that kind of depends on where our income level is at and what our giving is like as well. But one of the cool things to me, though, is that God gave a percentage, not an amount. When the lady that gave the 2 mites in the temple, Jesus said she gave more than everybody else because she gave all that she had. If I give 10% of my income now compared to what my 10% of my income was 15 years ago, I'm giving a whole lot more money now than I did 15 years ago because my income has increased. But my heart's still the same before the Lord because I'm giving that same percentage of what I had. But as I've been faithful, God has blessed me, and the home I live in is nicer. The things that I have in my home are nicer than the things that I had 15 years ago. And so I do think that there is this gradual progression that God desires for his children to have better.
Yeah. And this is kind of a little bit of a touchy subject, but I know a lot of times people and some of our viewers today do this, and I did it for a long time too, is they look at nonprofits and they expect them to run on virtually nothing. I mean, all their donation, they want 100% of their donation to go towards the ministry work, and that would be great. But there's people who are sacrificing their lives, their livelihoods, I should say, not their lives, their livelihoods, and they're to do ministry, to make these things happen. And we need to respect their livelihoods too, and know that now you don't want to do it extravagantly. You don't want 60% of your income, into a nonprofit to be used on overhead, but you got to have the things you need to do ministry right. And that's good staff, good, reliable, faithful staff. So those things cost money. And so people who are donating to nonprofits, they need to be aware that the nonprofits that are running best, maybe not the ones that are running best, maybe not the biggest ones, but the ones that are running most efficiently are the ones who are good stewards of every dollar donated, and they're very aware of how the resources are being allocated, and that they are trusting that that the people will continue to support based on their results, not on a report that says that the director makes this amount of money, and they're putting a new addition onto their building or their new office, and it's going to cost $500,000. I don't know. It's a little bit hard because from a ministry leader perspective, we need to live decent lives too. We can't be the paupers of ministry just because we're called to do this. But we can't flaunt it. We can't do those other things. We can't go the extravagance for sure.
One of the questions I always bring back to this is, how much should we pay Christian leaders, or how much should nonprofit ministries or churches, how much do they cost to operate? And I say, okay, well, let's just look around us. You know what? So you want somebody that has experience, you want somebody that has education, you want somebody that has capability. Well, what are you going to pay anywhere else? You know, we shouldn't expect that any less than that, even in the body of Christ. And I don't think that we should feel weird about having those conversations.
No.
One of the most important things, and you touched on this, is accountability and transparency. You know, we have a rule at our church that if you give during the year, you have rights to have full access to every single penny that we spend. If you want to know what we're spending on our light bill or on our toilet paper or what my personal salary is, I would gladly sit down and talk with you. And I can guarantee you that if we compare my salary and my income to the industry standard, it's not even going to be average. So, you know what? We're not ashamed of those things. We're not going to hide any of that stuff, because we believe that we are being efficient and that we are serving the Lord well and that we're having good results, and nobody here is getting rich off of it. You know, that's not the point of this. The point is to be able to do it well and to be able to make the best use of what God has given us. And you know what? That responsibility falls on the ministry leaders. And so we're going to stand before God for every single decision that we've made.
Yeah. And I think ministry leaders, pastors, those people who are leading parachurches and churches, actually, I'm not saying they should be paid more than industry standard, but it's a harder job to do than to run a business, just because of you have moral obligations, much more, and there's more responsibility, there's more ethical type of behind the scenes thing that needs to be done than it is in a business. Not that businesses aren't ethical or anything like that, but the standards for running a nonprofit, if you hear a business that end up where a CEO, embezzled money, that's business, that's way. But if you happen in a church, it's like, whoa, that's totally inappropriate. And
right.
So actually, I think those leaders, the ones who do it well, should almost be compensated more than what the average person in the free market should be getting, because of the added.
Well, the Bible even talks about that. It says that those elders in the church who teach and who do those things, they should receive double honor. So there is that idea that we should take care of those people who are doing the work of ministry and doing a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people are okay with that. I think a lot of people, the reason that they get a little gun shy when money gets talked about is maybe they've been a part of a church. I have a friend who is part of a denomination that they would call them at their home if they did not get their tithe in, on time that month. Or they would call them up and say, hey, we think that you make more money than this. You need to be increasing your tithe. And I can't imagine being a part of a system like that, or they were part of a church that every other year they were trying to build bigger buildings and just always asking for more and more and more and more money. And you know what? That's not a good thing either. One of the rules that we try to follow is every single Sunday, we have a short message, 2 to 3 minutes, about why we give, because we want to explain that to people. We want people to understand why they're giving. It's something that we do every week, so we feel an obligation to explain it. But then aside from that, we don't really talk about money. We share the good things God is doing with the money that's coming in, but we don't continue to make those extra asks all the time, because man, that can become exhausting.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I do. That's what my fund development role as the director here in the Other Child Foundation. That's my goal, is to ask people to support. And I was always hesitant on that for years, because I thought I was asking or begging them, but I realize now just how much it benefits people to be generous donors, and how much more joy people get when they give a gift that makes a positive impact, maybe an eternal impact on a child. I want people to experience that. So I have no problem asking people to donate money now, because I know what they're doing is changing lives. And so I was hesitant on that for a long time, but now it's like, this is going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit others, benefits the kingdom. It's an easy thing to do now.
Well, Jesus said, your money is going to be where your heart's at. And there's a lot of people where their heart is in McDonald's. Their heart is in Amazon. Their heart is at Walmart. These aren't things that they have to live, to survive, to breathe. But man, that's where they're investing their money. And it shows exactly where their hearts are at.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing. People that want to invest their money into the kingdom, into the work of the kingdom, and everything that goes with that, the overhead and also the actual ministry itself. Well, there's going to be a great reward for that. And I think that we should applaud people and encourage them to do it.
Yeah. They say if you ever want to get a true feeling for where your heart is, look at your checkbook register. And yeah, if there's a lot of pizza delivery and all that stuff on there and very little giving to nonprofits, then to churches and nonprofits, then you might be skewed a little bit.
Yeah. And you know what? This is all part going back to our original focus of the mission focused life. We can live on mission with our money as much as we can anything else. In fact, I don't know that there's anything that we use more regularly and consistently in our lives than our money. Jesus talked about money all the time, and he never said that you shouldn't have it. He never said that you should be afraid of it. He just said, don't fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes dangerous.
He wants to give those resources to people who are going to invest it into his kingdom. So, that's the positive way to look at it. If we're investing into his kingdom, he's going to probably bless us with more and more because that's what he wants us to do. So yeah, that's just a thought that just kind of occurred to me is that, the more you give, the more he's going to bless you. And that's not a new thought, but it's just interesting that he wants to give people who are going to invest into his money the resources that he has. So,
well, just some names: Abraham, David, Solomon.
Yeah.
These weren't poor guys. We have this idea of Jesus being financially destitute. Not true. The Bible tells us that there were a group of women who were helping support him. They actually had to have a treasurer that was keeping track of their finances, so I don't think Jesus was walking around poor. I don't think he was walking around destitute. I think he was a good steward of the money that God gave him, and then after the time of Jesus, you have Lydia, who was a very wealthy businesswoman that Paul stayed at her home for an extended period of time. We have the names of other people who were doing well financially. So yeah, again, I think as Christians, we just have to have the right perspective that when money comes up in the church, it's not all about the church just wanting our money. God doesn't need our money, but we need to give God our money because it keeps our heart in the right place and it keeps us living on mission.
yeah.
Well, hey, man, thanks so much for talking about this. People might find this to be an incredibly awkward conversation, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because if this is awkward, that probably reveals that there's something awkward in our heart in regards to money. Maybe we're looking at money the wrong way. I hope that this is encouraging to people to start doing things God's way and experience the blessing that he intends so they can get on track living on mission. Tim, have a great week this week. I hope the rest of you guys will catch up with us next week on A Mission Focused Life.